I just have to be here early. Bless you.
Thank you.
Here we go in 3, 2, 1. And welcome to episode 448 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn.
Michael O'Malley.
In today's episode, we're going to be doing movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we're going to continue our Don Bluth series with 1997's Anastasia, which is, I feel like somewhat in the realm of like nostalgia that we had in the last episode with Land Before Time, where a lot of people who were born between born in the 90s have an impression of this. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion because I feel like your impression of it when you were probably like 7, between the age of like 4 and 8 is very different from what it's like in 2023 to like watch the movie again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my wife is a huge fan, Rebecca. She like more or less quoted the whole movie to me as I was watching it, which I had seen it as a kid too, but not as much as her. So
yeah, my best friend, when I told her, she got really excited. She texted me just a novel of all of her feelings about how important and how much she loves it. So
good.
Definitely
Good.
have a
I
look.
was talking to a friend before we got on here, and she was talking about how, because I was like, yeah, it was kind of came out at the same time. We'll get into it. What are we doing right now? We'll get into it. We're wasting.
It's a non-linear cinematary,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off for movies that we saw this week. I have 2 new releases. First one is Showing Up, which is the latest from director Kelly Reichardt, which I feel like, Cinematary as a pod is a, overall we're fans of Kelly Reichardt and her work. We did a whole series on her. This one, though, this is her latest. It brings her and Michelle Williams back together for the first time since Certain Women. This one, Michelle Williams plays a ceramics artist. She's probably like late 30s, early 40s. Clearly comes from a very artistic family. Her mom has clearly a pretty prestigious job at this arts college in Portland, where the movie's set. That is a place where Michelle Williams also works at. It's kind of like doing kind of clerical work and things like that. And then her father is played by Jed Hirsch. He talks briefly, but clearly had like a career in ceramics as well. And then her brother, who is a little bit estranged, he has kind of art backgrounds as well. And so a lot of the movie is about kind of Michelle Williams navigating just the art world to a degree. You have her, the main person she's dealing with is her neighbor / landlord, played by Hong Chow, who just like small, I know she was nominated for an Oscar earlier this year, but like Hong Chow just like strong, like always just real strong, and like kind of like the perfect actor to like join a Kelly Reichardt movie, because like she can play like the very understated character in such like a impactful way. She's really great in this movie. But clearly, like Hong Chow's character and Michelle Williams, Michelle Williams' character is very what's her name? Lizzie. Lizzie is very like antisocial to a degree. Like she kind of gets along with people, but is just very like, she just has one of those kind of standoffish personalities. There's no like bedside manner with Lizzie. And the Hong Chow character, whose name's Joe, she's very, 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 very chipper, very, very friendly. He seems to kind of get along with people. And so this is kind of one of those movies where I could kind of describe the plot, but it's one of those like not much happens in it. The core plot is that you're watching Lizzie as she prepares for this big exhibition that she's going to put on of her work, and it's just kind of getting from, I think, 1 week to the next, with the end of the next week being her exhibition, and just kind of the challenges that come in between. And I really liked it. I mean, I'm pretty in the bag for most of Kelly Reichardt's stuff. I can't really think of one that I was just like down on. This one, I think it's a little bit, it's a little different than like First Cow, which is, you know, has that kind of historical element to it, similar to like, shoot, my mind just went blank. Meek's Cutoff. Well, this one is, you know, set in the present day, but the thing that I really like about it is that it handles this kind of intersection between like, not only between like art and life, but just like different artists. You know, like you have these characters played, you know, you have the Hong Chau character, you have a character played by Andre 3000, who's great, who's just kind of like this like laid back bohemian, chill ceramics dude who's just kind of like, yeah, you know, like I'm cool, I'm Andre 3000, like I'm just chilling out at this arts college in Oregon, like firing ceramics projects and like drinking wine. But you like kind of have these personalities who like gravitate to one another and like create this artist community, which is already kind of a, you know, I think artists in general are kind of an outcast community. You know, it's not like they're necessarily like would be qualified as like mainstream people. Like they're like, that's kind of what gravitates them to art, is kind of that outcaster status. And what's really interesting about this is how, you know, Reichardt frames the Lizzie character as like an outcast of the outcast, which makes it like more challenging to just kind of be noticed in this world. You know, like I said, she doesn't have bedside manner. She doesn't have that ability to kind of like just effortlessly have these conversations to kind of get people to notice her or pay attention to her work. You know, she's very much kind of living off of like small comments from people. You know, the Andre 3000 character, his name's Eric. Like he'll, you know, compliment her stuff when she's coming to fire it, or you know, Joe will come over and be like, "Oh, that looks nice," but like it's for a practice that's very solitary. This kind of gets to the fact that like it's very solitary, but then there's still like hierarchies within these like isolated / outsider practices, that it's, you know, it's not just kind of this utopian, like we're all the outsiders together, which I kind of find fascinating. I really want to watch it again to kind of capture those little nuances. But that's about, I mean, I don't know. Otherwise, I thought it's really, like I said, Michelle Williams is really strong. Hong Chau is really strong in this. It's got this lovely ambient score by, I'm going to screw up his name. What's his? Ethan Rose. Ethan Rose does like this, and he's like a Portland-based ambient musician. He does this really nice score. And then like, you know, the movie's going to be awesome because it also has this placard at the beginning where it's like, you know, score composed by Ethan Rose, like flute compositions by Andre Benjamin. So like you just have these random flute moments that like Andre 3000, you don't see him playing the flute, but you just have like these like flute flourishes every once in a while in the movie that like he played. And I was
wait, is it his character playing the flute, or like he's on the score?
He's just on the score. Like you don't
nice.
see, like he's not like at a party like playing. Like, and I was reading an actor who was in the movie was kind of like putting notes on Letterboxd and was just like, yeah, like he literally was the coolest guy. He just kind of like chilled out and would be like playing the flute on set, which I'm just like, imagine like you're on the set of a Kelly Reichardt movie with Andre 3000. He's just chilling out with you playing the flute. That just sounds like a surreal experience.
Movie magic.
Movie magic. And he's also really good. I don't know. Like, I really like this, like, it's very different from like High Life Andre Benjamin, or I'm trying to think of like other, let me see, like what are other movies he's kind of been in, like High Life, or like he's been in stuff like Four Brothers and Be Cool and like these like other kind of more stylized movies. I don't know. This one is just like a very chill, like laid back kind of like old man Andre 3000 character that I kind of dug. Like I'm like, he's like a good character actor.
What a charmed career.
Yeah.
Like, what an amazing trajectory.
Right. So showing up, it's A24, so it'll probably pop up on streaming. They're usually on, I forgot who they're putting their movies with now.
They used to be on Canopy, but I think that stopped.
Yeah, I forgot. They've been on like, I want to say like they have a deal with like Netflix or Amazon, one of those to like put the movies. Anyway, I wouldn't say this is one to check out if you've not seen previous. If you're a Kelly Reichardt fan, I think you'll be good. But I don't know if this would be like an entry one that you're just like, yeah, this is great. I think you kind of have to be on the wavelength that you are familiar with like watching her to kind of see this one. But I liked it. The other one I saw was a wildly different movie, and that's Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Which shout out to the pirates of the world for helping me watch this movie. But this one, the couple things that interested me. One, I love big budget blockbusters of like IP, video game IP that just like kind of go for it. Like I think video games. This is not a video game. It's more just like kind of just game, like you're trying to kind of distill like a game into a movie. But like, so I apologize, D&D fans, for calling it a video game. But like you're trying to kind of distill this like very engaging, interactive, tactile experience into like a movie that then you have to like watch. And I feel like video games are kind of similar in that realm, but. So I'm always fascinated with those. Like I really like the World of Warcraft movie that they made a number of years ago. Like that's really kind of just this fascinating piece of blockbuster filmmaking.
Directed by David Bowie's son.
Yeah, directed by Duncan Jones. Like this kind of stuff that's like not attached to like like the new Super Mario Brothers movie. Like I'm sorry, but like I don't want to watch that. Like that just seems like just cash grabbing. This one, it's not cash grabbing. It's just like this straight. Like it stars like you have Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, and Hugh Grant in this movie. Like it's a strange movie. But I don't know. I found it to be incredibly charming. Like Chris Pine is the lead. It's directed by the guys who did Game Night, which is a super underrated action comedy. If you've not seen Game Night, you should watch Game Night. It's great. And it's written by Chris McKay, who did Lego Batman, among other things. So it kind of has like this, like a very like, it's an irreverent sense of humor, but not. I don't think it necessarily like goes too. It keeps itself pretty grounded because you have like, I was telling Grace before we got on here, like this is a perfect example that blockbuster movies should be hot actors just kind of having a good time and being funny, because that's what the majority of this. Like Chris Pine is just having like a fucking great time, and he's hot, and he's just enjoying it.
So is he like playing the game? Is this like Jumanji, where like
no, it's not like
here's
Jumanji.
the Dungeons and Dragons board, and they get like sucked into?
No, that's what's kind of crazy. So like honestly, it just kind of like tosses you in, and it's as if like you're just in this. And again, forgive me, I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, so I don't like know the terminology.
Like you're on the campaign?
Like you're on a campaign. Like
okay.
It just kind of tosses you in there. And it doesn't like, there's no like dice being rolled. There's no like game boards. It literally like, it just puts you in this world. But I think, and I'm missing it because again, I don't have that knowledge, but there are like, they do like make references in terms of like, these characters are related to characters that you would be coming in contact with if you were playing a game. Like they make decisions based on like game decisions. Like that's incorporated into it, but it feels much more organic rather than like it trying to be like this meta thing. It's very much like in like it's taking itself not seriously, but it's like it's just invested in this story. It's not trying to be a meta approach. And literally I don't feel like going into the whole convoluted plot of this thing. You have Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez, who Chris Pine is trying to get has been put in jail for like 2 years. He's trying to get out to go and rescue his daughter. They break out, and then he finds that his daughter has been kind of brainwashed by Hugh Grant's character. And so pretty much the whole movie is them going on this, preparing to go on this big heist to steal this relic, as well as the money from Hugh Grant's character. And that's what also kind of, makes it enjoyable. It's very much predicated on a number, like it's just kind of set piece after set piece after set piece. And the set pieces are very based on like, it feels very. That's why I mentioned video game at the beginning. Like it feels very video game in nature because it feels like and again like maybe playing a campaign of Dungeons and Dragons where it's like mission. All right, finish that mission. Next mission. It feels very much like that, and the directors do a good job of like being creative and kind of creating these very thought out set pieces that don't feel like the same thing over and over again. They have some personality to them. They have some just kind of filmmaking like skill to it. Like it's not just kind of this lazy CGI attempt. Like it does feel like they've tried to kind of concoct these things to be, to entertain you as like a blockbuster movie. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like overall, like I thought it was a good time. Like I like to see movies like this that again it's predicated to IP because Dungeons and Dragons has been around for decades. But it's not trying to be meta. It's not trying to like be like, hey, only those guys only people who have played the game like can understand this. It feels very accessible, but also true to like what people are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't know, it's a blockbuster that like is not perfect, but it has like a personality to it. It feels like the directors are giving a shit, and so I don't know. I enjoyed it. It's one that like I would watch it again. Like it was a good time. So Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. When it pops up on streaming, like I don't know if you kind of just want a little bit of a little like a hey, let me just have a good time and kind of just enjoy something. I feel like you could do much worse than this. It's good. So. But I'm gonna turn it over to Grace for a movie that again is like we're taking a wild like 360 again from what we just talked about.
I had the pleasure and the opportunity of watching Dog Day Afternoon. Sometimes I feel silly bringing such what I would probably call like essential viewing to you guys, just because it feels like at this point, maybe this is something that like most people have already seen, but
I've not seen it.
no, okay, that feels good.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Sure, I would love to. First of all, I loved it. Dog Day Afternoon, the compelling true story of a bank robbery gone wrong. First of all, I love bank robbery.
A true comrade.
Perfect rhyme. But you can't go wrong.
No victims.
I'm not very good. Just this is a quick little aside. I'm not very good at Letterboxd. What a funny sentence. I have the app. I try so hard to like do it, but the only thing that I have done on that app is made a list of bank robbery movies and like robber movies that I like. This is now on there. This, Hell or High Water, Bonnie and Clyde, like fucking bank robbery, like quintessential. Like you are an American hero to me if you are a bank robber. So if I were on the jury, I would not convict. But anyways, bank robbery gone wrong. This man, Sonny, played by Al Pacino, decides to hold up a bank in, I believe, Brooklyn. I might be getting my geography wrong, but it is in New York. And things go wrong. He gets bad information. The cops are tipped off. He's surrounded up from all sides. How is he going to get out of this? Plus, he has a number of hostages, mostly female, one male hostage who is the male manager of the bank, and then all these other young gals that are tellers, typists, what have you, and how he works his way out of this sticky situation he's in. And so, like I said, this was a real story. This did happen. A man in Brooklyn, John Wojciech. It's a very Polish-looking sounding spelling name that I don't feel very comfortable pronouncing. I literally looked up how to say it on Google, and I can't repeat it right now. But he held up a bank under the premise or the for the main purpose of funding his partner's sex change. He was a queer man, a gay man, in a relationship with a transgender woman, and he was looking to fund her operation to cure her of her gender dysphoria, her these feelings, and to help and support her. So wow, another an icon in another way.
Another good reason to rob a bank.
Another good reason. Again, so the first good reason to rob a bank, he says this to a news anchor. News anchor gets a direct line into the bank, calls him up, Sonny, why are you doing this? Why are you robbing the bank? Al Pacino says so. Well, why they got the money here? Reason number one to rob the fucking bank. That's where the money is, stupid. Like, why do I have to even say? So he has a very noble, again, he has a very noble cause, I feel. And so, you know, anybody with a heart would, I would hope, agree. Yeah, fund it. Fund her operation. She deserves it. A very compelling performance by Pacino. He is electrifying. There's the only thing that I knew about this movie before I saw it was him chanting Attica, you know, in front of the bank, and I can hear that so clearly. And now to have seen like the entire scene, I'm like chanting, pumping my fist in my living room. I'm like, Attica.
Does it connect to the prison?
No, it's or is it? It's
Well,
that was like a prison with a famous uprising in it, right?
yes.
Yeah, it's connected to that because it had just that had just happened, and so this is kind of
Okay.
the movie is like kind of riding off of that energy from the Attica prison riot.
Okay, cool.
And like the police brutality, the mistreatment, and the shootings. So jumping off of that, feeding off of that energy, whipping this crowd into a frenzy, and like on his side, the police are the enemy. We're on the same side. Like we want the same thing. So, he's chanting that, and I got whipped up. I got excited. I got caught up in the moment, and I'm like, it's so sad. Who is an actor this day and age that can do that, that can deliver a performance like Pacino, that is, no one really comes to mind, but it's like, what a performance. You love to see it.
Get Chris Pratt in there. He'll do it.
Why do we have to see Chris Pratt everywhere? Enough! Quit putting him on my screen. I'm sick of him. He could never do this. He lacks the range.
Well,
first of all, he would never do anything even remotely queer.
Yeah, he would never help his queer partner. Like he would never do that.
I think if he said the word Attica, he'd kind of like burst into flames.
Yeah, he would. That would happen, and he would he'd probably just turn his partner in, and it would become a whole different movie.
He'd be the cops negotiating the hostage situation.
Yeah, that's Chris Pratt could be in the movie, but he would be on the outside. Yeah,
and then it's Timothy Chalamet. Attica. Just like all weak wrists and all elbow, like he's just so wispy, not commanding at all. So it's like it's a powerful performance. It's a powerful film. It feels so alive and relevant. I mean, with the righteous and noble cause for robbing the bank, the direct opposition to police, just excellent. And like I said, it felt like such an essential watch, and I'm so glad that I got to see it. Compelling, stirring, moving, sad. Why can't we just let bank robbers get away? It was so unfortunate. He was doomed from the start. He was never going to get that money, and you know it. Just let him have it. Just give it to him. You know, they keep repeating back to the like, "Hey, don't be a hero." You know, don't be a hero. It's like, yeah. So then just give me the money and let me go. I'm condoning this crime. I support robbery against big banks. So does Cinematary now. So you guys are in on this too. But I hope that was enough to stir you to watch it.
I want to see it now.
It's on HBO Max.
It's like one of those movies,
Max.
You know, the movies where like it's iconic, but there's never been a hook to make me want to watch it, even though I know it's like a classic. But now I'm hooked.
Wow! I'm so glad I could do that for you. I got a million of them.
Yeah, I just didn't know what it was about. So all I know is that like Pacino's face is like always on that poster. I'm like, this looks like a 70s movie.
It's it's like dealing with a lot of heavy, very like current issue like of that time like topics, but I feel like it's also just like very like broken away from that. If you like just kind of distill it down to like its core kind of like cinematic values, like it's also just like incredibly engaging and entertaining. Like it's a very like brisk, well-paced like thriller. It's
absolutely.
It's really good.
I mean, the whole thing takes place in the afternoon, in the 5 or 6 hours it takes for him to pull off, bungle this heist and negotiate some way out. And it's so quick. The like natural progression of light, how the crowd amasses. I mean, it's fantastic. And a lot of it is just electrifying. It's fantastic. So check it out.
It's worth seeing. It's Sidney Lumet. Yeah.
Oh, should I have started there? It's Sidney Lumet.
Yeah, Sidney Lumet. I mean, always good. So, yeah. Let's wrap it up. Michael, you're going to bring us home with another new release.
Yeah, so I saw Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which to a lot of people I think will maybe hold appeal because they read the Judy Blume novel of the same name when they were children, which I did not. But it is also, and this is the reason I was interested in it, directed and written by Kelly Freeman Craig, who did Edge of 17 several years ago, which is, by my money, like one of the top coming of age films of like recent memory. And this one's really good too. So this is, like I said, based on the Judy Blume novel. I read some Judy Blume growing up, but I didn't read a ton. But this book was kind of notorious. I remember growing up because it was the controversial one. It was like the banned one, right? And it was banned because I always remember hearing about it. It was banned because they talk about periods. And like, I gotta say, it lives up to that. There's a lot of talk about menstruation in this, and it's good. The movie is about basically two things, centering on the same character, whose name is Margaret. And Margaret is like 12, 11. She's 11 at the beginning of the movie. And she's just got home from summer camp. And her family lives in New York City. Her mom is an art teacher, and her dad is something. He's like a business person. It's never really explained. But her dad gets a promotion that makes them move to the suburbs in New Jersey. And so it's kind of like a big life change for her at the beginning. And then the first thing that the movie's really about is this new group of friends that she kind of falls into, who are part of her neighborhood, and it's kind of like almost like a Mean Girls type clique, where there's this like girl named Nancy who's kind of calling all the shots, and she's pretty careless and mean and manipulative. But one of the things that these girls are all obsessed with is like, well, when's puberty going to hit? You know, when am I going to get my period? Like, all this sort of stuff. And, none of that should be controversial. Uh, many people have to, ask those sorts of questions throughout their lives. Well, not throughout, but I guess early in. And,
Second puberty, third puberty. It's hell. It's hell.
I'm 70 and the puberty's coming back again.
It's like malaria. But anyway, it's silly that that's a controversial thing to put in a movie or book geared toward people who are, on the precipice of this very change. However, that said, sometimes like people who want to censor books haven't really read the book, and they have just read stuff out of context, and you like, oh, this is an edgy book, and you read it and it's not that edgy. But I will say that this delivers, like, a good like 30% of the movie is like devoted to like puberty related issues. And it's very funny and cute and like kind of poignant at times, because Margaret, like, as she is like getting into puberty or the age of it, like, other people are kind of like developing at different levels, which is kind of like what's awkward about middle school, is that you've got some people who like, are really developing, and you've got some people who are still like, biologically like elementary schoolers, in terms of hormones and stuff. And like, there's a lot of like, the movie mines the insecurity that comes from that kind of chasm, right? And there's a lot of like really, I think, kind of sweet and sensitive things about that insecurity. Like, there's this one girl in her class who is like much taller and much more like developed. She's got like boobs and stuff. And everyone just assumes that she's letting all the boys feel her up. And there's just all these rumors about her, just simply because like she is like an object of like an object of curiosity, and like kind of like, someone who hit puberty like last year or 2 years ago. It was in like fourth grade. They talk about like, oh, she came to school with a bra in fourth grade. And it ends up being very sad, because this girl like is really isolated in the class, because she has the thing that everyone in the clique kind of wants, but because she has it, like, they assume, oh, well, she must be like, overtly like sexual and like letting these boys like do things to her, like, just by virtue of like this kind of uncontrollable thing that happens to her body. And the movie then kind of goes the other way too, about like people who like have insecurities because they're not, hitting puberty at the same time. And so like, that's like one significant thread in the movie. And I kind of knew that going in, because I had heard the controversies about the book. But the other part of the movie that I was not prepared for, and that's also really good, is that the movie is also about religion, which I guess I could have guessed from the title. But the title is quite literal. Like, Margaret, the girl, is like praying throughout the movie. And her dad is Jewish and her mom is Christian. And so they've elected not to, neither of them seem to be practicing. And they've elected just to let her figure out religion on her own and choose her own thing. So she's been kind of raised unaffiliated. And so a lot of the movie is her questioning, like, well, what is this religion thing? Where does this fit in? Her sixth grade teacher assigns them a research project and kind of nudges her toward religion, because he hears about this thing. And in her investigation with, how do I feel about religion, she starts visiting other people's faiths. So like, one of her friends is like Episcopal, and she goes and visits an Episcopal church. And then she goes and visits a Catholic church. She visits like a Black church. She goes to temple with her grandmother. And her grandmother like misinterprets this as the girl wanting to be Jewish. And so the grandmother starts assuming that she's Jewish and is really excited about that, because she's been kind of hurt by the fact that her son no longer practices and hasn't like raised their daughter like that. And then we later find out, like, because of the questions that the girl asked, that Margaret asked, that also she's never known her mother's grandparents. And the reason why is because her mother's grandparents are so devoutly Christian that when her mother married a Jewish person, they kicked her out of their lives. And so like by her like investigating religion, it kind of like opens up this like kind of world of really complicated feelings, and it kind of like really interestingly dovetails with all of the puberty stuff, because as you enter adulthood, the world just opens up to you in ways that reveal it to be much more complicated than you initially thought. And like a big part of the arc of the movie is her having to, because of either the issues connected to puberty or the issues connected to religion and her like broader extended family's feelings regarding that, she's kind of forced to to confront and deal with these really heavy issues that she's not thought about before. Like, you know, she just asks her mom where like, why haven't I ever seen my grandparents? And her mom just kind of like breaks down crying, telling her this like, you know, kind of horrible story about how her parents were super anti-Semitic and didn't want, you know, to associate with a Jewish person and all this sort of stuff. And like, you know, this girl's like 11 and being told that, you know, her grandparents think her mom is going to hell and all that. And it's like this really wonderful scene. I forgot to mention that the parents are played by Rachel McAdams is the mom, and then Ben Safdie is the dad. And they're both really wonderful, but especially Rachel McAdams, who I think like gives like, if not her best performance, one of her best performances in her career. She's just really wonderful, and in particular, that scene really hit me because her just the way that the body language and like how she modulates her voice, so she's like, she doesn't want to tell her daughter this because it's hurtful and heavy and mature to have to carry the kind of generational pain that she's relating. But at the same time, like you can see that she does kind of want to tell her about it and is trying to make it like something that, oh, it's not a big deal, I've moved on. But you can also tell that she's like hurt still about it. And it's just really great. And I don't know, it's good. Like if you liked, it's not, you know, Edge of 17 is fairly immersed in the kind of like cadence of like contemporary like YA, in the sense of it being really quippy and that sort of thing. And Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is not like that at all. Like it's a very kind of slow and patient movie, and a very quaint in a lot of ways, because it takes place in the 70s and because it's based on a book that I assume is kind of like out of pace with like what a lot of like, you know, like John Green or that kind of thing is now. But it has that same kind of sensibility of making these like really kind of sensitive observations about people navigating adolescence, and the ways that they intersect with the adult world. And like in Edge of 17, like a big part of that movie is the main character kind of realizing the like her own like closed-mindedness and like solipsism in like her own problems, and kind of realizing like how her actions have started affecting others, and like others kind of like learn to understand her better through that. And like there's an element of that here, where a big part of the movie is Margaret kind of understanding like better the ways in which she's connected to those around her that she didn't realize initially. And so it's got that kind of sensibility, even though it's a much fast-paced movie than Edge of 17. And you know, it's good. You know, Kelly Freeman Craig, she's got it. You know, she's really got her finger on the pulse of this teen movie stuff,
Well,
or preteen movie.
we were talking about it off mic, but you know, she's done a couple other things before Edge of 17, but especially with these last two, it seems like she really does. Even in Edge of 17, not only just like kind of how it handles the subject matter, but also is just so like she just gets these really really captivating, you know, performances. Like Haley Steinfeld's so good in that movie. You have like the Woody Harrelson character.
Woody Harrelson's very good in that movie.
He's great too, you know, and like she's able to capture these great performances, and it's also they're also like she's no like slouch as a director. Like they're really well directed movies, and I'm glad that, you know, even though it took her a number of years to kind of make a follow up to that, to Edge of 17, she's still getting a movie that is played in movie theaters all over the country, even though it's not like a Guardians of the Galaxy or a you know, a Fast Five or something like that.
Yeah, it's not doing too well financially, so people should go see it.
Yeah, you should go see it because
rescue this movie.
because I like that this is kind of like the realm she's working in. Like I was saying, like it's you've seen some of those directors who like make this kind of like small, nice movie that people enjoy, and then like they go and do like an 8 episode thing for like Disney, like some TV show or something like that, and you're just kind of like whatever. And so I'm glad that like hopefully she's able to make these types of continue to make these types of movies, because I'm like, these are the types of movies that we need in the market to kind of offset the Guardians of the Galaxies and the Fast 10s and the Super Mario Brothers and stuff like that.
I like these movies because it's nice to see myself represented as like a moody brunette with emotions and a difficult religious relationship. Like,
Yeah.
you said she has her finger on the pulse. She has her finger on my pulse, and I will go see Are You There, God? It's Me, Grace.
Yeah. It's
My
there
mom's
for
name
you.
is Margaret, so that's the sequel.
Nah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Well, cool. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back talking about the Romanov dynasty and
how great they were.
And how great they were, and getting a really full historical picture of that whole time period in Russia after this.
100%. Zach, on that note,
that was going to be my letterbox review. Was I have no questions about the Bolsheviks and the Romanov dynasty. It's all covered. No notes.
In that movie. That's how I feel. I have a funny story about that too.
I don't really feel that way.
I did.
It was a very like, no, there's
it
so
was
much.
For me.
They were all dead. They all got assassinated. Rasputin wasn't even around at that point.
I hope you read. I was on Wikipedia last night while I was watching this movie, and just like guffawing at like some of the quotes from the historians. Let's see. Hold on. Oh yeah. So this historian named Bob Atchison said that Anastasia was akin to someone making a film in which Anne Frank moves to Orlando and opens a crocodile farm with a guy named Mort.
No, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, and then there's another one from the surviving Romanov families, the surviving Romanovs, and it says that they felt the film was distasteful, but most Romanovs have come to accept the repeated exploitation of the Anastasia romantic tale.
No, there's like so much like where was I looking? Yeah, they started like doing the research, and they were like, yeah, the whole history of Anastasia and the Romanov dynasty seems a little dark for an animated movie. And you're like, yeah, no shit. And then so they're like, we'll make it lighthearted. And then like they were talking about like the villains, and they were like, well, we don't want to show like Lenin and the Bolsheviks. So they were like, well, what about a police chief that doesn't like Anastasia? Like that was their first thought. And then they were like, no, let's just do Rasputin, who
make him a wizard.
Who's a wizard who's not in any way linked to this story, and just bring him in. Yeah, it was a lot. It was I like that they just like Russia was just like taking L's left and right, because like you have like the Romanovs, the Russian dynasty, like it's a Russian family, but they feel like they're like some fucking like British family, like with Angela Lansbury and shit, because you're like they don't feel like Russia at all. Like Russia just taking L's over here from this movie.
Poor Russia.
Yeah, I feel bad. I mean, it's a little bit of an unfair like.
Can Russia ever catch a break?
In the sense of it being kind of dark for an animated film, it does remind me of Disney's Pocahontas as well. Where it's like if you read the real life, who decided that this should be a Disney movie, and then they realized that like through the production, like we got to fix this story so it's a kids movie.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we gotta fix some things here. Yeah. No, it was. Yeah, it's fine. I just just watching it, I'm just like, damn, like did y'all just like want to me it just felt like let's just make a movie to talk about how much we hate communism.
That was like for the first like 20 minutes, and then it kind of forgets about that.
Yeah, then they get out of Russia, so they're like, all right, we'll stop taking shots.
I do love Rasputin. I'll save it for the actual recording, but I love actually Rasputin. I'm glad that they made him the villain.
No, he's fine. It's just it's just very funny. Like I one line, where was it? Yeah, in reality, Rasputin was already dead when the Romanovs were assassinated. Like they give this whole reasoning why they want to like include him. It's like
it kind of implies that the 1917 revolution happened in 1916.
It's some hairy history, you know. It's some questionable. We should have done this. We should have like made this a whole different series and like done a double feature of like this and Strike. or
this and Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just thinking of like this of like the fake Russian history, and then like have an Eisenstein documentary, like something like Strike that just goes like, oh, this is happening. But yeah, this is Gone with the Wind, very similar. And Pocahontas.
Grace, I'm sorry, we're just like shitting all over this.
That's okay.
It has nothing to do with the movie itself. It's more just like
I'm just listening. I was having some internet troubles, so I was just like, just stay quiet. They'll never know.
Okay, I didn't. You're right.
Acting.
The fun. I have it in the notes. The fun part of it is like how Disney like clearly tried to bury this movie. That's fun,
dude. Disney. I don't know if you ever watched that Lindsay Ellis movie or not video about Aladdin versus was it Ferngully? Is that the other Robin Williams movie?
It's been a long time, but yeah, I saw it.
But yeah, I knew Disney was awful and craven, but I was deeply surprised at like how much they worked to just like burn Ferngully to the ground. And it's like, why do you care, Disney? You're on top of the world.
That's the same kind of thing with this. It's just like yeah, I'll get in. I'll go into the notes, but like they literally like bring back a movie, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, yeah, it's petty bitches over there.
Disney bad.
Just a bunch of petty bitches. That's what Disney is. All right.
Especially then, you had like Eisner and Katzenberg both in that company at the same time. Like, the pettiest.
Do this real quick.
Grace, your internet problems cleared up now?
Yes, I think so. I hope so. We'll see. It was touch and go. I had no idea what you guys were talking about. I think from what I caught, it was you guys like talking about all the fun historical inaccuracies.
Yeah.
Which I'm looking forward to hearing more about and also sharing my stories. I'll just give you the cliff notes real quick. This is where I learned all my history about the Romanovs.
Oh wow.
Yeah. No child left behind left me behind, I guess.
Sitting here on the floor.
I don't know that the American education system has a very rigorous Russian history requirement.
No.
So
no, it doesn't.
I didn't know.
It doesn't. Well, you know, it doesn't. The American education system has a very questionable history process on just even American history. You know, they had, and growing up in Texas, you had to take Texas history.
Man, me too. I remember that.
And what they teach you in Texas history is so wrong.
How old were you when you realized the Alamo deserved what it got?
Probably too older than I probably should have been.
How old were you when you forgot it?
Yeah, I have not.
Have you read? There's a really good book about that, Michael, called "Forget the Alamo" that came out a couple years ago.
I gotta read it.
It's fantastic because it literally just like debunks all the stuff. They went to Texas for independence not because the Mexicans were bad. The Mexicans were abolitionists.
Right, they wanted to own slaves.
Yeah,
they wanted to own slaves.
And the Mexicans wanted to get the Americans out because they're like, we're abolitionists, and all you want to do in Texas is own more slaves than you can anywhere else.
Well, also they wanted to get the Americans out because it was Mexico.
And also it was Mexico, and they were like, no, you're coming to our land with slaves who we don't want here because we don't want, like, people should be free, and you're fucking with all this. And then, you know, like the Davy Crockett's and and the Sam Houstons are like, nah, screw you. We want enslaved people and we want more money. So
Right.
we're gonna
And
fight you.
as a matter of fact, we hate you Mexicans too.
Yeah, we hate you too. And they're just like Santa Anna's a cool guy. Super
Yeah.
What did I do?
super
Man, that
cool
guy was always like the arch villain.
He's always the arch villain. Awesome guy. Like all around cool dude. Everybody loved him except for the Americans.
Cinematary, pro bank robbery, anti Alamo.
This is
Fuck
great.
Alamo. Yeah. Anyway. We should do an episode on the Alamo.
That really long movie that was really boring.
When I was a kid, I thought it was when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I thought that when you died in a movie, like the actor just died, and so
like all movies are snuff films.
Yeah, and so I watched when I watched the Alamo, I was like, well, John Wayne, at least like he picked a good movie to die.
Man, that would have been the best thing about the Alamo if John Wayne had died in it.
It actually died.
Yeah.
Really good. That's when I was a kid, I was like, oh yeah, John Wayne, like he died in the movie, like because they had to make it real, so he died making the Alamo because he had to be Davy Crockett.
Where did you live in Texas? Because I lived in San Antonio, so that's like the heart of Alamo country.
I'm East Texas. I'm Dallas.
So
Dallas. It's very
Dallas. I see.
Very different.
Yeah.
At least none of us are from Houston.
Oh, but that's my grandparents. That's where my grandparents are from. So
yeah, same. That's where my grandparents live. That's an interesting place. All right. Anyway, enough on.
Enough about Texas.
Let's go to Russia. Texas.
Can we say that?
We don't want to ignite anybody's like discussions about that state right now from us talking.
Sandy about cheeks busting. What y'all say about Texas?
Yeah.
Sandy's probably anti-Alamo too. You know what they did to squirrels there?
All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. And we're back with part 2 of episode 448 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to continue our Don Bluth series with 1997's Anastasia. Directed by Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, from the script by Susan Gaither, Bruce Graham, Bob Sudziker, and Noni White. The film stars Meg Ryan, John Cusack, Kelsey Grammer, Christopher Lloyd, and Angela Lansbury. The evil wizard Rasputin puts a hex on the royal Romanovs, and young Anastasia disappears when their palace is overrun. Years later, the Grand Duchess offers a reward for Anastasia's return. 2 scheming Russians, planning to pawn off a phony, hold auditions and choose an orphan girl with a remarkable resemblance to the missing princess. They bring her to Paris for the reward, not knowing she's the real Anastasia. Anastasia was the first 20th Century Fox animated feature to be produced by its own animation division, 20th Century Fox Animation, through the studio animation studio Fox Animation Studios. In May 1994, the LA Times reported that Bluth and Goldman had signed a long-term deal to produce animated features with 20th Century Fox, with the studio channeling more than $100 million into constructing their new animation studio. For their first project, the studio insisted they select 1 out of a dozen existing properties which they owned, where Bluth and Goldman suggested adapting The King and I and My Fair Lady, though Bluth and Goldman felt that it would be impossible to improve on Audrey Hepburn's performance and Lerner and Lowe's score. Following several story suggestions, the idea to adapt Anastasia from 1956, starring Ingrid Bergman, originated from Fox Filmed Entertainment CEO Bill Mechanic. They would later adapt story elements from Pygmalion, with the peasant Anya being molded into a regal woman. Early into production, Bluth and Goldman began researching the actual events through enlisting former CIA agents stationed in Moscow and St. Petersburg.
No way.
Around the same time, screenwriter Eric Tuchman had written a script. Eventually, Bluth and Goldman decided the history of Anastasia and the Romanov dynasty was too dark for their film. In 1995, Bruce Graham and Susan Gaither reworked Tuchman's script into a lighthearted rom-com. And actress Carrie Fisher also made uncredited rewrites of the film, particularly the scene in which Anya leaves the orphanage for Paris. For the villains, Bluth also did not take into consideration depicting Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks, and initially toyed with the idea of a police chief with a vendetta against Anastasia. Instead, they decided to have Grigory Rasputin as the villain, with Goldman explaining it was because of, quote, all the different things they did to try to destroy Rasputin, and what a horrible man he really was. The more it seemed appetizing to make him the villain. In reality, Rasputin was already dead when the Romanovs were assassinated. Bluth stated that Meg Ryan was his first and only choice for the title character. However, Ryan was indecisive about accepting the role due to its dark historical elements. To persuade her, the animation team took an audio clip of Annie Reed from Sleepless in Seattle and created an animation reel based on it, which was screened for her following an invitation to the studio. Ryan later accepted the role. In her words, quote, "I was blown away that they did that." Peter O'Toole was considered for the role of Rasputin, but Christopher Lloyd was hired because of his popularity from the Back to the Future trilogy. Bartok was initially written for Woody Allen, but the studio was reluctant to hire him following revelations of his relationship with his ex-partner Mia Farrow's adopted daughter.
Whoa.
Good call. Yeah.
Surprisingly woke Fox.
Yeah.
Fox was like, no.
No. Yeah.
Martin Short was also considered, but Hank Azaria won the role 10 minutes into his audition. 20th Century Fox scheduled for Anastasia to be released on November 21st, 1997, notably a week after the re-release of Disney's The Little Mermaid. Disney claimed it had long planned for the re-release to coincide with a consumer products campaign leading into Christmas and the film's home video release in March 1998. As well continue the tradition of re-releasing their animated films within a 7 to 8 year interval. In addition to this, Disney would release several competing family films, including Flubber on the following weekend, as well as a double feature of George of the Jungle and Hercules. To avoid branding confusion, Disney banned television advertisements for Anastasia from being aired on the ABC program The Wonderful World of Disney. As always, thank you, Disney. The New York Times in 1997 said, "Hardly a moment passes in Anastasia, 20th Century Fox's splashy foray into the Disney-ruled sweepstakes of the animated musical, when you don't have the queasy feeling that a nervous corporate committee was breathing down the neck of this unfortunate movie, forcing it to be all things to all people, no matter what had to be sacrificed in elementary common sense." Variety in 1997 said the much-anticipated debut offering of Fox's new animation unit, Anastasia, reps an ambitious, serious, but not particularly stimulating musical feature that unconvincingly attempts to graft warm and cuddly family film motifs onto turbulent aspects of modern history and mythology. And Roger Ebert said, "Animation is the road less traveled for the movies. Although it offers total freedom over the inconveniences of space-time and gravity, it's so tricky and difficult that animated features have always been rare. And Disney has always known how to make them best. With Anastasia, there's another team on the field." On that note, let's talk a little bit about Anastasia. We talked a little bit at the top of the episode about kind of how this has a nostalgia factor for a lot of folks. I think all of us had seen it as kids. Was this everybody's first time, like, since seeing it as a kid, to kind of like revisit it?
I saw it maybe 10 years ago or something. I saw it with Rebecca, who I'm now married to, but I think we saw it before we were married or something, but I still had no strong memories of it. Like, all I remembered was Rasputin, to be honest. And so I had forgotten a lot of the details.
Yeah. I mean, watching it for this time, but, with a more just like, I'm having to objectively watch this movie and like come to an opinion. What did you feel about Anastasia?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I like the. I feel like in every Don Bluth movie I've on this series, it's like there are things I like about the movie, and then it's like, but an imperfect object overall. Like at the beginning, it was tremendously hard for me to like ignore the history. Like it really rubs your nose in the history in a very wrong way. Like the I don't know, them like saying like, oh, we were having so many parties or whatever, and like then they had like 1916 flash across the board, and I was like, so all your peasants are off like dying in World War I, and you guys are having parties. Like, what's going on here? But then like it kind of like drops that by the time she goes to Paris, and I kind of got over that. And although it was funny, like as I was watching it, I was like, this feels like Dr. Zhivago or something that had like CIA involvement in it. But this was the like late '90s. They probably weren't doing that then, right? But then you said they had CIA consultants on this movie, so. But yeah, like I don't know. Then once it kind of shifts gears into the kind of like it happened one night style kind of movie. I didn't have like those problems, but I started like noticing weird things about the animation. Like I don't know, like I've said this before, but like the backgrounds on Don Bluth movies are always like incredible, and this movie is no different. But there's something about some of the way that his characters are animated, and I think I noticed it more because these were supposed to be like realistically proportioned humans for the most part, and it's sometimes very weird. Like the male in
The
particular,
well, the
just looks.
facial expressions are very off-putting. Like
Yeah,
the
like the
eyes and stuff don't all like move together at the same time. It's a little weird, a little
right,
uncanny.
and I think that works. Actually, I think one of the reasons why Rasputin's my favorite part of this movie is like his body's falling apart, and so it doesn't matter. Like it's kind of like making a virtue out of the fact that the human characters are. I don't know if it's drawn or the in between frames or what, but there was just something that rubbed me wrong about like specifically the I'm forgetting the male romantic love interest, but
Dimitri.
Yeah,
Dimitri. There was something about the way that Dimitri was animated that started really bothering me.
Dimitri is supposed to be animated to be hot, and he is. Vladimir looks like Feifel's dad from
He
American
does. You're right.
Like he's got the perfect proportions minus the little mouse teeth, but he looks
Yeah,
exactly like Feifel's dad.
but there's some amazing pieces of animation in this too. Like I love the little like green glowing demons or whatever that go like that whole train sequence. I love. There's some uses of like CG animation that I think like kind of stand out as bad, but like the one thing that's really cool is when that statue comes to life at the end of the movie, and it's like the Pegasus looking thing.
yeah.
That looks really cool, and it turns like that kind of like I don't know if they're using caps or probably not caps, but like whatever 3D animation technology that they're using. That kind of like weird like it doesn't really quite fit with the medium look that it has, and it makes it work, and I think that that's really cool too. But some of the like just really mundane stuff in the animation stood out to me as kind of like strange in a way that I don't know if it was intended or not. I don't know. I was kind of weirded out by that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm glad you noticed that too, Zach.
Yeah. Grace, what was your impression kind of coming back to this movie?
How much fun I was. I like. I didn't really think I had any thoughts. It's just like I'm gonna watch this fun movie that me and all of my friends really liked. I was thinking about what you said, Michael, the last time we were on together with An American Tale. It's like, did you feel growing up that there were Disney movies and then the other movies? It's like, yeah, here we go. Let's the other Disney movie, the Disney princess that never was, Anastasia.
Mm-hmm.
I also felt the same way about the animation. There was some parts of it that you could sort of I felt like you could see the seams. Like, yes, this is definitely like your first big animated feature that's not all hand drawn. So like I can't really speak to the change in technology. I'm not familiar with it, but I felt like as a casual viewer, like I definitely observed it and it was very noticeable.
Yeah, but
Whereas
it wasn't, like people should also, if you like watch this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. I'm like, you should go back and watch like Toy Story and Toy Story 2 and things like that, like Bug's Life, like
Yeah.
early
Also,
Pixar.
wait for Titan AE if you really want to see Don Bluth go off on the computer animation.
Yeah, like it's you should like if you watch like early Pixar movies, you go, oh, like there's some weird, uncanny animation in those that you kind of forget about. So
Yeah.
I give it a pass.
Well, sure. Okay, yeah. But overall, I think for me, like the romance was still definitely there, and I think now as like an adult, like Meg Ryan makes perfect sense as the spunky, female love interest. Stand by what I said just a second ago. Dimitri is drawn to be hot with like that cool guy hair with like his little rat tail.
What do we call that hairdo? Because that was like a '90s epidemic, like that specific like middle part, but it's kind of like tall and arched. Like,
Yeah, like
is
a
there
lot.
a name for that style? I just always call it the Dean haircut because Dean in Gilmore Girls has it. But
Yeah,
I'll be honest though, on Dimitri, like I don't think John Cusack was the right choice. I feel like
no, he was.
I felt like they needed somebody with a little bit more personality. I don't know who that is, but like John Cusack's very flat.
Yeah, and it makes it easy for Meg Ryan and Anastasia to like just dominate this guy.
Yeah, she's good, but yeah, he was kind of like flat to me.
Yeah. Um.
do you have like, because some of the imagery in this movie has stuck with me. And Grace, you said you watched it a lot when you were growing up. I remember being kind of, when I was little, like a little bit frightened of this movie. Not the whole thing, but like when like Bartok like goes into, I guess it's hell, whatever,
Yeah,
wherever.
that's terrifying.
Yeah, and then like the image that always stuck with me is when Rasputin's head falls into his own torso. Like I love that image now, but I remember that being kind of like weird and uncomfortable for me as a kid. Did you feel like that as a kid watching it a lot?
Yeah, definitely afraid. It felt like it felt scarier than what we would get in like any other Disney movie. And like I do remember like definitely just like sitting like this, like just hands covered and like peeking through my fingers watching. But I definitely just watched it a lot just because, and my friend also watched it for a lot of the same reasons. And she was like the huge, big, like, this is an incredible movie, nostalgia fan. The music in it is what really like helped soften any sort of anything scary. Even his song, even Rasputin's song, is catchy and interesting, but still like kind of scary. And then the lullaby, Once Upon a December, like the melodies sort of soothe any sort of childhood fear or trauma that come with this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I did like the music.
it's I think that's probably where the music, even more than like the animation, is probably where people I think make like the Disney comparisons, because you think of this like it's coming out in '97, so like you've already like the Disney Renaissance is already like in full swing. Like you've gotten Little Mermaid, you've gotten Beauty and the Beast, you've gotten Lion King. I mean, they're even kind of taking people from those movies. You have like Angela Lansbury, who's in Beauty and the Beast, like she's in this movie. You have Jim Cummings, who was in Lion King, doing the singing portions for Rasputin. And so like I was the Rasputin number when he's like in hell and he's having his whole like singing number there. It feels like it's not necessarily animated 100% like it, but you kind of just from the cadence of Jim Cummings singing and like the kind of set piece itself, it feels very like reminiscent of like Be Prepared by Scar from The Lion King. And so like that's whether you find that to be like good or bad, like I think when it comes to like, because this movie I feel like more than any of Don Bluth's movies, it's like the one where they were like, yeah, he definitely like leaned into doing kind of a Disney impression with this. And I definitely see that through the songs, because you can feel the impressions of these ultra successful Disney movies from the past decade or so kind of being not pushed in this movie, but definitely like taking the lead in how probably the studio wanted to see it presented.
I think like his relationship to Disney is kind of interesting, and especially like we kind of jumped over some time between Land Before Time and this. Like it's like 8 years or something, 9 years between this and Land Before Time,
Mm-hmm.
and the Disney Renaissance occurs in that amount of time. So
Mm-hmm.
like when, like I remember when we were talking about Rats of Nim, or not Rats of Nim, The Secret of Nim. A lot of reviewers mentioned that it had like the kind of sensibilities of old Disney, because Disney animation was in shambles in the 80s, and just kind of falling apart and like really directionless. Like when Don Bluth, former Disney animator, like was making his own films, he was like aspiring to like what he saw as like a golden age of Disney. And then now watching Anastasia, it's like smack dab in the middle of like what a lot of people would have considered like a, you know, another golden age of Disney. And it is kind of interesting to see Don Bluth trying to modernize that, because a lot of his other movies really feel out of time. Like especially Secret of Nim, you know, has that kind of like weird like solemnity of like a kind of old Disney movie, and this is trying to like pep it up to be that kind of Broadway energy that the Disney Renaissance had. And
well, I think even watching this, like I got a little bit more appreciation, definitely for Land Before Time, which very much feels like it's kind of a little bit off the path that like Disney was going on. But even like An American Tail, which we talked a little bit about, like it shares like that kind of rescuers vibe to it. You know, it's very similar in that respect. But I feel like it's a movie that doesn't necessarily. This one to me just very much like it feels like it is really trying, and I feel like it's more like the studio than Don Bluth going like this is what's successful. We kind of have to push this in the movie. Like it made me appreciate An American Tail a little bit more, just because even though that's one that's kind of going head to head with Disney, still feels like it's like Don Bluth has more control over the product than something like Anastasia.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of like on that meta level. It is kind of sad that Disney was so, antagonistic toward this movie, and now they own this movie, right? Since they own Fox, don't they?
Yeah.
I guess, which is just kind of another layer of this is a movie that was trying to kind of beat Disney at its own game, and now Disney's just absorbed it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a the formula is definitely like in there. Though I don't know, like at this point though, Don Bluth is just kind of a bummer, because like we mentioned, like the parts that kind of scared you, and that's something that going back to Nim and even American Tail and Land Before Time, like it had those kind of darker moments that you don't, especially in this period of time that we're in right in the 90s, like you don't see as much of that with Disney. It's at least the dark moments for Disney don't go as like disturbing or uncomfortable for younger audiences like parts of Nim do or An American Tail do. And so you still kind of get that energy just in terms, some of the scenes that Grace, you and Michael were describing, but like this one doesn't really feel like it gets that gets to be that weird and dark like Don Bluth's movies usually get to be.
No, definitely not. Like the train scene. I mean, every crack another joke, crack another joke, crack another joke. Like they're doing more chemistry between Anastasia and Dimitri. Like it felt very like that was a very serious and life or death situation, and they had the time to be quippy and make jokes. And Anastasia's like, oh, if only I could throw you from this train, I'll throw you from this train. Like it felt like that kind of back and forth. And like I definitely agree that it didn't really have the opportunity to be like as heavy or off-putting or like appeal directly to like children that can we can, when we were kids, like we could have handled something a little more serious, something a little heavier.
Well, and for a movie that's longer than a lot of these other ones that we've talked about, even like like Land Before Time is like just a little over an hour. Like it doesn't ever get those like, because like Don Bluth at his best when he just kind of like gets a quieter, slow moment, just like slowly leads you in to whatever set, whatever set piece you're kind of get into. Like I'm thinking right now of like the scene in Secret of Nim when she goes and is going to see the great owl, and like how that's just like a slow, creepy, like even now it's like it's not scary, but just very like unnerving, unsettling sequence. But it's all played out like very slowly. And this one, yeah, to your point, Grace, like it's all about hitting the joke notes, and it never really like takes its time to like let Don Bluth like sets you in a place. Like the fact that you shift from Russia to Paris, like I didn't really even feel like that was a transition because I never really felt settled into either location.
Yeah, it's interesting because like we talked about this is like borrowing a lot of elements from like Disney princess movies, which it certainly is, but um, in a way, it is kind of structured like a Don Bluth movie in the sense of the very beginning of the movie shows something catastrophic happening to the protagonist's family, and they're separated from their family. And then you have this kind of like journey, like picaresque journey through like all these kind of like environments as they try to like reunite with their family. I mean, that's like American Tail. It's like Five Goes West, or not Five Goes West. Sorry, the Land Before Time.
I'm sure it
Like
happens in Five Goes West
may-
too.
It's a little separated. There's
Yeah.
some time apart.
But then like the rest of the movie, I think because it leans into this kind of romantic banter and more so, it doesn't allow for this kind of like you mentioned, Zach, like the quiet sad moments. Like there are a few, and but because it's a like a kind of Broadway style, like Disney Renaissance style musical, like a lot of that's communicated through song. She has some songs about like uh, her amnesia and like how she is kind of unsure about her past and like wants to find connection and all the sorts of things that you hear like Fievel or Littlefoot saying. But because it's through the like medium of like a show tune, it doesn't have that starkness that sometimes comes in to the other movies.
Yeah,
Absolutely. They gave her an animal sidekick, undercutting any like they bring her Puka, the Disneyfication of Don Bluth, like any like
Okay.
when she's setting out, trying to choose her path or whatever. Does she go be a fisherman and fisherman's wife or whatever, and like never take a chance on who she might be or her identity, or does she like strike out on her own? Like they undercut that with. I totally agree. It's how can we get to this next song, to this next song, to this next song, like. So it's a soundtrack. It's something else to commodify. It's how can we get to the next show tune instead of any sort of story, any sort of explore.
I also think we talked a little bit about it, but I also think the fact that it's tied to an event that, even though this isn't giving like the full picture of, is still like a thing that happened for real in history. I think that also takes away from it too, because as you mentioned at the beginning, Michael, like they seem to have zero interest in like even kind of pretending to like want to explore like what happened in this part of history. And so if like in order to like really add this like nuance and this like this world building to the story, you would have to engage on some level with the story of Anastasia and the Romanovs, and they don't seem to want to engage with it at all.
Yeah, except on like the kind of mythic level of like just we're reclaiming Russian monarchy. Like that's kind of like the only level that it exists as like a engaging with the history, is that kind of like reactionary, like basically right wing idea of like we need to go back to this time when the scary poor people didn't have control, and the people who could just like dump 10 million rubles on a con man, had power. Yeah. I don't know. It is wild though. Like that Disney Renaissance format. Most of the time is set in kind of like a decontextualized, like kind of. There's no real world connection. Like Beauty and the Beast, like it's set in France, sure, but like what's happening in politics, we don't know. And like Little Mermaid's the same way. There's a few examples where it's not, like Hunchback of Notre Dame and Pocahontas, and those are both like notoriously like these troubled productions that have like varying degrees of success with real history, but or real engagement with social issues. But it's so rare to have that like Disney Renaissance format on like an identifiable like political moment, and it's uncanny. Like I don't know, I found it really uncanny in this movie that it was this kind of abstracted like princess structure, but it's real history and like recent history. Like at the time that the movie was produced, it was like 80 years ago. Like that would be like now making a movie about like the Korean War or something, or I guess World War II or whatever, and acting like it's a princess movie.
We kind of already do that, so
We do, and it's weird, but it's also not like you know, since it's come up, I'll read a quote from a historian, which I found on Wikipedia that I thought was very funny, which is this. This historian named let's see, Bob Atchison said that Anastasia was akin to someone making a film in which Anne Frank moves to Orlando and opens a crocodile farm with a guy named Mort. And I think that's it. It's like, if this were more engaged with the history, it might be a little bit more interesting. And if this were less engaged with the history, in like sense of, what if it was like some vague environment in which we had a princess story? Like that'd be a little okay. But this like mid ground in which we have identifiable like political like dates and stuff, and like real historical figures that people remember, but also nothing to do with those actual historical events beyond like a kind of like vaguely reactionary like resentment against the Bolsheviks. Like,
yeah.
it's just it's a strange way to structure a movie.
Listen, like I get that it's a kids movie, but like how do we never talk in the movie about how Rasputin legendarily had a giant dick?
Missed opportunities.
Never talk about it.
Maybe
Like,
it's
that never
Spielberg.
falls off. That never falls off his body. It's like his giant ass dick.
Maybe that's the Spielberg touch again. Like he cut all that stuff out of Land Before Time.
That's maybe He was like, no, we can't have just the massive Rasputin penis. We have to
Okay, now that Rasputin's come up, though, I will say you got to hand it to Don Bluth. Like a lot of Disney villains die off screen, they fall to their death or something like that. But Rasputin gets such an amazingly gnarly death in this movie.
He does.
I love it.
I think I would have liked it. I don't know about Peter O'Toole. That would have been like a very weird choice for Rasputin. Like Christopher Lloyd at least has like that manic energy to make it happen.
But, I like his raspy voice.
Yeah, it's he's
Rasputin-y voice.
He's definitely the one at least like having the most fun out of it. Like
definitely.
Like everybody else really isn't chewing scenery. And honestly, Rasputin. I thought Rasputin was in this movie more.
Me too. I remember.
And
he's in like maybe 20 minutes total of screen time at most.
It's an hour. The movie's an hour and a half, and he's in like 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes tops.
But he was my prevailing memory of this movie. Like I did not remember anything except that this dude, like this evil wizard, who was falling apart.
I'm just saying, legendarily had a giant dick.
See, I was fortunate enough that I learned everything about the Romanovs and the Bolsheviks from this movie.
Yeah.
So I took it all to be true. So I'm surprised they didn't include that if they were trying to educate the youth of the world.
I think it's a good fact to include in there. It's something. It's if they're going to bring him back from the dead to be a part of this piece of history, they might as well include that.
Resurrection.
Yeah.
Resurrection. This was a pretty funny movie too. Sometimes. Did you guys laugh? Did you guys think it was funny? No.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I liked Bartok. I liked Hank Azaria being like a Russian.
Like a Midwestern Russian.
Yeah, like a Midwestern like he sounded like he was supposed to be Russian, but he sounded like he's from Chicago.
He just made up his own accent. It was great.
Yeah, like I thought that he was fun.
Yeah, he was so fun.
I liked him and Rasputin. Like he was
The original Odd Couple.
Yeah.
We need like a Anastasia 1.5 or something, where it's just like Rasputin and Bartok in hell, just like palling around.
Yeah, like that would have been fun. I don't need any love. Like it's fine.
I think like for me, like I guess it was John Cusack, but like a lot of the humor depends on the banter between Anastasia and Dmitri, and there wasn't a good enough back and forth. It felt like I guess it was the guy, like he's just not carrying his weight in terms of the jokes, like the setups or whatever.
I'm like John Cusack, who I like John Cusack, but just was like super flat. in the role. I'm trying to think of like who would be better though. I mean, like I could see
Hugh
like
Grant. Put Hugh Grant in there.
Hugh Grant would have been
He would be
fun.
great.
Like a Christian Slater, even like at least Christian Slater gives you a
Oh,
little
wow.
edge.
He would have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
fun and neurotic and really.
Yeah. You couldn't have Woody Allen in this movie.
Wait. It's when did Ants come out though? Because whoever made Ants did not care about any of the things that they were caring about in this
He
movie.
made Ants. Wasn't that his movie? Like,
No, I think that was
This DreamWorks.
Wasn't that DreamWorks? Of course, DreamWorks.
Spielberg was like, "I will stop the line on dead dinosaurs."
but let's.
well, the dinosaurs are already dead, so you know it's easy to.
No, I don't want to traumatize the kids with that, but I want to traumatize the kids with an animated ant voiced by Woody Allen. I should watch Ants. It's on Peacock. Might have to do that. Ants came out the next year though. It's 98.
Wow.
So he didn't lose too much. Didn't miss out too much.
Honestly,
I'm glad Woody still had his animated debut.
Yeah, like he's fine. Like you know, as he is in general and in life, like he's fine. But because I enjoyed our Russian Chicago like SNL skit, Hank Azaria. Because he didn't sound like he was actually from Chicago. He sounded like he was doing the Bears sketch from SNL. Like it was just Chicago. I'm Bartok. Come on, we're going to hell.
And I hit her, sir.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is he doing?
It was so cute. I thought it was kind of funny. It was a lot funnier than I remembered. Like, I liked the first musical number and how it made it out to be like, life sucks since the revolution, but at least we get to gossip.
See, I didn't like that. I was just like, this anti-communist propaganda is just killing me.
But again, I learned everything about this from that. So I was like, oh, okay, good. So they're happy. They're singing songs. That's good. Thank you. That's good to know. If I got
It's true. That's what people say about the USSR is they were happy because they got to sing songs.
Sing songs and gossip.
Sing songs and gossip.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Anastasia before we wrap it up?
I have said this, I think, every time I've been on, but I always feel a little bit sad about Don Bluth because it never feels like, at least for me, it never feels like he has his unqualified success. Like there's always some sort of shadow over the production of this movie or of any of his movies that we talk about where he didn't quite get to, it wasn't quite realized, like whatever was trying to happen. But that said, all of the movies that we've talked about have been financial successes. And I'm glad that he had those moments because those moments didn't last. So I'm glad that despite the Disney embargo, he was able to make money off of Anastasia.
Yeah. Grace, anything from you?
No, but
you're gonna teach a Russian history course after this?
No, but oh my gosh, it was like in the 6th grade when I finally learned that this was not at all accurate because one of my classmates did a presentation on the Romanovs and the Bolsheviks and everything, and she kept talking to me about it, and I'd be like, let's call her Claire. I'd be like, Claire, listen, I saw Anastasia. I know everything I need to know. And she's like, great.
It was a curse. It was not working class animosity toward the rulers.
Yeah. I'm like, I know it's okay. She could stop painting. Like, I know. And she's like, stop it. Please crack open a book.
Put the VHSs up.
But nothing else to add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. All right. Well, I believe that
the movies away, Grace, and enough. They're rotting your.
Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/cinematary. Big thanks to our patrons, Cam, Chad Newsom, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marstopi, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate your support of the show. Next week, we are going to be wrapping up our next episode. We're going to be wrapping up our Don Bluth series with 2000's Titan AE, which, as Michael alluded to, is going to be a very, 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 very different direction from the movies that I feel like that we have talked about so far in the series. So, should be a nice exploration. And then after that, we'll be having our 450th episode, which we'll probably announce next episode what we'll be doing with that one, followed by our Young Critics series, which is going to be a little revamped. So exciting things over in the Cinematary world. But until then, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next episode.